Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. The Ukraine war news update, frontline, extra, breaking, all of those things rolled into one. Just a few bits of information that I think are quite important to share with you, and I want to delve into a few of the details. I don't think I'll have time in my news pieces tomorrow to do them justice, so now's a perfect time. The first, there's some good news and some bad news and some interesting news. So, starting with the good news is Staromaiorske has been liberated. Even Zelensky's admitted this or claimed this, so I guess it's got to be true. That's pretty significant. It is an important, well, I guess all settlements are important because they need to advance kind of past them and onwards, so they can't like leave pockets of Russian resistance, right? But this does open the door to other settlements in the area. Let's remind you where Staromaiorske is. So on my map, I'm not going to go into the lines again. You should know what they are by now. Velika Novosilka here on the southern Donetsk front line, but also near to the Zaporizhia front line there. We come into this area where this is the front line before the counteroffensive. So we've got an advance along this river here that comes down through between Staromaiorske and Urizhny. And it's Staromaiorske that I have kind of half under Russian control here, as according to Andrew Perpetua's mapping, this blue line. So that is the settlement we are talking about. That has apparently been liberated. There is indeed, lots of sources are saying it on the map, liberated by the 35th Marine Brigade, says no reports. There are I don't know if you can call that genuine kind of geolocated evidence, but there is footage within Staromaiorske. I suppose if they put that in somewhere that's easily identifiable, then they'll get a piece of artillery ordnance on their heads. That's a village of Staromaiorske being liberated by the Ukrainians, and they're kind of announcing it there. Urizhny should be next. So just to let you know, that's this place. So if the Ukrainians successfully liberate Staromaiorske, so let's try and get the right kind of zoomage there. Let's do some drawing. So this would mean, yep, they'll have control over that with the river as well, giving a kind of natural barrier. That would leave this kind of Urizhny bridgehead for the Russians, or some kind of pocket that's left, this cauldron where they're completely surrounded apart from the neck here. The Russians were wanting to be getting out of dodge right now, so I guess Urizhny will fall pretty quickly after Staromaiorske. So that is important also because that then opens up an advance further to the south. It means that Pryutne might be under threat because this area this higher ground here might then be easier to take by for the Ukrainians, and Pryutne might be surrounded more easily, so on and so forth. And it's all about getting down to here to Staromaiorske, where there are defensive lines behind. Right, let's go and check on Deep State map that actually usefully draws these lines out. The kind of bradyäphoric lines that have been joined together here. So all the dots on bradyäphoric's map. So Staromaiorske is there. That's Pryutne I was telling you about. And as we come down further to the south, we come towards Staromaiorske, and it's beneath there that we have the first kind of Surovikin lines. All the fighting that's been happening up here has involved lots of smaller trenches and lots of robust Russian defense. There's a lot of talk about in defending so robustly everywhere, they are attriting their own forces, and it could mean that actually once they are kind of broken, that things fall quickly. The dominoes start falling as the morale might be low, as the equipment has been attrited, as the artillery is unable to support them because that's been attrited, and they've used up a lot of their troops. Then actually it could just be a quicker advance. Or the other end of the spectrum is that they're going to find it difficult to advance through all of these places because they're smaller trench lines, and they're still going to be defending every meter, the Russians, and then you get to these larger defenses, these Surovikin lines south of Staromaiorske, and it becomes really quite difficult. And we'll kind of touch on this in a little bit when we go west. But yeah, that's really important that Staromaiorske goes there. Let's just see actually if we can get a sense of the different heights going on here. This is along a kind of river bed, but I don't think it's particularly high each side of that river bed. So 113 meters there, 120 meters up there. So if you look down here, I don't know if you can see it, that's below my face, but there's a height indicator. So it's not huge amounts of height difference between these different places. 115 meters, yeah. So anyway, that's it is lower than the ground to the west along this river bed, but it's not like hugely different there. You got 100, it goes up to 160 meters, so there is some raised, the ground does rise here to sort of some 40 meters higher. Right, anyway, that just gives you a bit of an indication. So that's happened in Staromaiorske. Staromaiorske has been liberated by the Ukrainians. So that's the good news. Velika Novosilka salient is in a good place, or better place for the Ukrainians. Now, there's also good news coming out of Robert Turner today, but also some pretty bad news too. So it turns out that the Ukrainians have continued to make some progress in this area to the east of Robotna, and that is good. They need to do that. They're working towards Verboved. So if we go onto the deep state map, we can look at where the major defenses are in this area. Now, as I've talked to you before, that you look somewhere like Velika Novosilka, coming down here, you break that line, and actually it's fairly easy down south. There's not really a lot of defenses, and that's probably why Velika Novosilka is a favored attack point, because it's quite easy going down there to Mariupol. Whereas when you come over to, I mean, goodness, when you come over to the Orikhiv, Malotokmachka, and Robotna area, you have a whole series of these that you need to get through before you get to Tokmak, and then think about getting further down south to Melitopol. Now, what has happened here in Robotna is that the Ukrainians have sort of breached these first lines here. That talked about that the other day, how there was evidence that they were in and I think they were further to the west. I don't know whether these lines that Deep State have are exhaustive of the trench lines, because I'm pretty sure they go like that, and the Ukrainians had breached them here. But nonetheless, in fact, let's have a little look on the War Mapper map. Yeah, so you can see northeast of Robotna here, you have the main trench line, quite continuous all the way over there, and then going down to that's Verbove there. So on Deep State map, that is Robotna going down to Verbove. Oh, goodness me, that could be this line here. So this could be where they breach it over there. But anyway, that is the situation there with regard to. I mean, you can see all of these trench lines. It's going to be just really difficult to burst through there. It depends how well defended all these second, third, and fourth trench lines will be. But nonetheless, so what has happened? Well, first thing to say, let's give you, I guess, the bad news first. So that's not that. This is where's the bad news gone? I thought I had that in the right place. It's over here. Right. So the bad news is this bit of footage. So this bit of footage, and I won't show it to you because I'm sure it get restricted, but you've got a whole bunch of BMP-1s. These are your infantry fighting vehicles that move into position, and they appear to be, ready to offload their troops and don't get a chance to necessarily offload the troops. I can't see too many troops getting out there. I mean, if they're empty, it's kind of pointless. What are you doing driving sort of at least 6, maybe more BMPs Probably more because there's a couple over here. So there's 4 there. There appears to be 2 there. There might be as many as sort of 10 BMP ones coming into this area. Some of them are moving. And then what happens is they get hit by mines, hit by ATGMs from possibly both directions, actually, and then absolutely hammered by artillery. And it's just an unmitigated disaster. Now, if these are full of 6 to 10 troops inside, then that's also potentially a huge loss of Ukrainian troops. So this is not good news. Although there is other good news around Robotna, but it's just really expensive. Now, the problem is it's potentially not very well thought out. So Andrew Perpetua is talking about this on his Twitter feed earlier, and he says this regarding the Ukrainian attack, where it appears 6 BMPs were lost. The thing that strikes me is a lack of smoke. It's difficult or impossible to know exactly what happened there, what supplies they had available, etc. But from my perspective, there has to be more smoke on that trench. To be fair, my response is almost always shoot more smoke. This, yeah, just don't really know what's going on, and you can bet your bottom a dollar that the Russians will be shouting about this exchange. This is quite similar to the beginning of the counteroffensive in the Tokmachka area, where the Ukrainians lost a lot of Leopards and Bradleys. So this is what Eric Zimmerman says here. I will be updating shortly on the ongoing Ukrainian offensive. Recently, it's involved courageous, if not terribly intelligent, assaults against Russian lines around Zaporizhia, ending like this. These BMPs carry squads of 6 to 10 to the combat line, and what we see in this dramatic video is around a company of infantry on BMPs reaching the Russian lines and being all but destroyed. Artillery, drones, and anti-tank weapons, including ATGMs, hit them from above and the flanks. No guarantee that these were full of infantry at this point, but if they weren't, and this was an actual armoured attack by BMPs without any tank support, it would make even less sense. We do see quite a few troops disembarking from some of the vehicles, and you do actually, if you look closely, a couple of them. And most likely they were mostly, if not all, loaded. The attack at this point was already lacking in appropriate support or strategy, having driven itself in a linear column into an envelopment within entrenched positions. So basically what happens is they appear to be driving down here between sort of trench lines, and you've got ATGMs coming from here, ATGMs coming from there, artillery hammering them, and mines going off as well. And they're just, one of them blows up catastrophically here, and then the others get hit by ATGMs. It's just, it's not great. So yeah, no guarantee. Yeah, no guarantee they were full. Where were we? The attack at this point was already lacking appropriate support. Yeah. But to make matters worse, the infantry do not disembark fast enough, understandably due to the situation and great risk of small arms fire from the trenches as well as artillery from above. The risk of not doing so, however, was even greater, and their only chance was a fast assault. A determined company of infantry desperately assaulting one of the trenches would suffer casualties, but likely succeed in at least holding a cover position, if not taking the whole trench system. Ironically, they would even make the armoured vehicles safer, because ATGM gunners must keep their heads down in the face of fire from dozens of small arms weapons from various angles. Then in turn, the heavier weapons from the BMPs can support the infantry. In the video, we see one able to fire effectively at least once into the Russian trenchwork. But this is unnatural for even very good troops in such a situation, and under these conditions, only some of the best and most experienced soldiers in the world could have been expected to effectively even attempt it. In this case, the company and its armoured ride were completely destroyed in terms of combat effectiveness. This unit now exists on paper only. We can only hope that most of the soldiers were somehow survived and perhaps were taken as prisoners. I'm not sure. It looks likely that that's the outcome. I think this is just a bit of a disaster. I don't have geolocation for this at the moment. I don't know where it happened, other than the claim is around Robotna. As you can see, there are trench lines in that video in a number of places. If we go back to the video, you actually see trench lines down here and trench lines up here, and these look like pretty serious trench lines. So I'm guessing that's going to be somewhere in this vicinity here on the way to Verbove. So that has happened. Then there's this bit of footage which is kind of bizarre, and there's a variety of different claims about what's going on here, and the Russians, probably laughing at this, thinking, "What is a BMP doing, or some kind of infantry fighting vehicle doing, just driving into a pretty obvious tank trap there? This is a tank trench, but actually, I think this is on purpose." And so let's play the video and see what you think. So, first thing to say, by the way, is that there appears just behind this somebody in the grass that I'm guessing is the driver that's jumped out. This drives fairly bizarrely in that really steady, not fast, not slow, a medium pace that we've seen vehicle-borne IEDs drive at in just a straight line, and it just drives straight into this trench here. But it's going to be about what we think here. So just behind that, just pops up at some point. There he is, just there. He's kind of out of focus, but there is a figure there that then you can see him moving, and there's also, I think, figures there. So I think what's happened is these guys have got out of the BMP and have left it unmanned, and it drives into the trench and up, down. So, and you can see these guys then kind of move off, and that's pretty much how it ends. So it's just like, what is going on there? My theory is that's completely on purpose, and it might be to try and test to see whether there are ATGMs being fired. It's to test whether there are mines there, to test maybe a number of things, but also you could maybe drive a tank across that BMP now. So there's a number of theories, and we'll go through them in a second. So Ukrainian APC at tank ditch of main defense line, direction of Verbove, about half a kilometer from the entrance. Right, this has been geolocated to here. Right, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see where this is. That is, wow. So now we're talking really quite seriously behind the lines as they were today. So that shows a really good advance for the Ukrainians, and it shows them around really here is my guess, around these big trench lines further down from where they have possibly taken them up here. I'm not sure, although those um, those BMPs that were kind of blown up, there did seem to be two lines coming down. So I wonder if we're back there again, or where else that might be. Goodness, it could, I suppose it could be any of those. They're not as I say, exhaustively mapped, right? But I think that's going to be somewhere around here. Just trying to compare this map to the deep state map. So you've got Robotna and Verbove pretty much on a level ish, and then that is sort of a level with the very top of Robotna there. So I think that's going to be around there possibly. Okay, now let's go and read some thoughts about what's going on there. So Randy Mott here says, I had a couple of reactions to the first video. And also, by the way, you've got this. So I don't know if this is the same vehicle. I presume it is, but it might not be. Another Russian channel shared a video of an abandoned Ukrainian BMP-1. Not sure if it's the same vehicle, as Rob Lee says as well, in an anti-tank ditch. These ditches are generally in front of the main line or strong points like Robotna, suggesting Ukraine has made gains. And of course, it's worth noting that this is right next to Dragon's Teeth as well. So this is in proper Surovikin line territory, right? So anyway, what Randy Mott says, he had a couple of reactions. It was unmanned, and one hypothesis: it was unmanned and checking for a minefield and direct fire coverage in front of the ditch. The rumor has been that the second lines were not manned. So I think that I think this is good use of that BMP, like testing out. No one fired at it. It didn't hit any mines. That means that is safe potentially in that area for an attack. The rumor has it the second lines were not manned. Two, it's a way to get some infantry crews into the ditch so that at night they can manually collapse the walls to allow vehicle passage. I don't think that's what's happened because because I think there weren't any troops in there. You didn't see them get out, and you saw troops behind where the vehicle was previously. So I think that it was unmanned. Three, although he's got four. It is a BMP, not a NATO IFV, so it is expendable. Yeah, there is that, and four, totally off the wall, but it's possible to drive the second vehicle over the first as if it were a bridge. Yes, and I'm sure that has happened previously. I'm sure that's a done thing historically. A demount five, a demounted team could exit the BMP and scout the ditch to determine if it was mined. Again, I don't think that's the case. You don't see anyone get out of that, although it is kind of within the ditch from that drone footage. If not, it's an excellent. At least I think that's drone footage. It might be camera up a mast. If not, it's an excellent place to assemble dismounts for a further assault. So I really think that's testing the ground, and I think that's probably a clever idea. And as I say, this really does tell you quite a bit about this area. It means that personally, I'd be like, this is a great place to attack, get some bridging vehicles. It's not been attacked. But you'd have to do that pretty quickly because now the Russians have obviously got hold of this footage and know that the Ukrainians are probing around here. One presumes, I mean, they've come all the way down there and not gone into any mines. So that is really significant. I just really want, well, we know where that is. I just would love to know exactly where those lost BMPs were and kind of piece it all together, because we're probably better to look at deep state map, because if they are successfully able to maybe break here, I'd just be interested where it is that they've come across all of that tough defense of those mines, ATGMs, and artillery. I mean, that's just a nightmare scenario. So it's one might say an SH1T sandwich there. So we've got some good news. Staromaiorske is liberated. Some bad news. An assault was completely decimated within a couple of minutes, with a huge loss of equipment and life, probably. And then at the end here, we got pretty good. It shows that they've advanced towards Verbove, that they've definitely advanced today quite some distance. Here is, the deep state map actually is showing that advance there. So that BMP1 is going to be in that little salient there, and it's possibly relatively easy to breach the trenches in the place where that video was taken. So all those things together, I think, it is good. All those last things is good for the Ukrainians, but they are, of course, going to be losing a lot because this is an offensive. These Ukrainians are trying to breach these defenses here, and that will cost them dearly, no doubt, when they meet that stiff defense. It's how sustainable that defense is for the Russians, and whether they can man all the lines in the same way that they are putting up the robust defense on the first line of defenses at the moment in these different places. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens overnight and tomorrow, and I'm sure more information will come out on all of these events as the dust settles. Anyway, I just thought that I'd share that with you. Sorry, it's a bit off the cuff and not crazy well prepared by myself, but you get the picture here. I'll be interested to see what you think. There were some people on the threads earlier who were like really buoyed by some of the frontline reporting I was doing earlier, saying, Ukraine is doing really well. Actually, yes, I think they are. They have had a good 24 hours, but it's not that they're not losing stuff. And actually, that bit in the middle there should, give you pause for thought that, there are going to be some big losses, and the Russians are going to be shouting about that a lot, of course. Anyway, thanks so much for your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.